Children in large quantities are not for me. Now, unfortunately, I had to learn that the hard way and became a substitute teacher. I thought back in the day that I was going to be a history teacher for junior high school students. I had this whole dream in my head that that was going to work out. But when I got in the classroom, what I found out was I was a terrible classroom manager. Now I manage classrooms of adults. That's a little bit different. But at the time, I was 21, 22, going into these classrooms. A lot of the other teachers thought I was one of the students. And I went to the front of the classroom and tried to lead these children. And what I found over and over again was that this was not my calling. I spent 5 years in college getting my history degree, working on getting my credential, and I thought this was going to be my career. I was heartbroken to find out each time I went into the classroom that this was not going to work. I used to come out of the class every day and that song, You Had a Bad Day, was on the radio. And I cried to that song. I can't even tell you how many times. So after I finished my degree, I started substitute teaching. It wasn't working out. It was summertime, and summertime school is out, right? I didn't have any substitute teaching work. I looked for some administrative jobs within the school system. I thought maybe I can get in there and get more comfortable in a school setting or with children, and I just couldn't find anything. I went and I got my typing test that showed I typed 55 words a minute. I went to a temp agency. They said I didn't have enough experience or recommendations. All of my experience had been at Staples or Blockbuster or a movie theater, as well as the substitute teaching. So they didn't see value in that for what they do. I also heard that a good thing to do with your history degree is be in insurance. So I thought, great, I'll go and I'll be in insurance. We had a big employer in my town that did insurance, and I went to them and I really pushed on that recruiter. I showed up, I talked to him a lot, and finally, after a few weeks, I got an interview. And so I got an interview for an entry level position. I was so excited about it. I thought, history degree didn't work out, or being a teacher maybe didn't work out for now. I'll go into this other thing, I'll see what's there. I go into the interview. It was the worst interview. Still to this day, I think it was one of my most disliked interviews. It was everything that showed me that the interview is as much on you as it is you interviewing them to see if you would want to work there. The interviewers were very pointed in their questions. So no matter what I said, they didn't seem to like my answer. And it was really clear within the interview. One of the questions I remember distinctly was how many days a year is it okay for you to be out sick? And give you a second. What would your answer be? How many days do you think are okay to be sick? Well, in this interview, when everything in my life was going wrong, in terms of all the work that I put into my career, in this interview, they told me that my answer was incorrect. My answer was 1 to 2 days a year because, of course, you get a cold or a flu every now and then. Their response was get a flu shot. Their response was zero. Zero is the acceptable answer at that insurance agency. And so for me, it was pretty clear in that interview, even though I got a flat tire on the way and I still got there on time, it was really clear to me that this was not going to be the place that I should be. And it was a hard thing to keep seeing these rejections over and over. And I remember being at home and I don't know what I was doing, but I was watching maybe like Matlock, like daytime television back in the day, and just kind of contemplating of what can I do? What else is out there? And you may want to think like, oh, then I found process improvement and it all came together. That's not that's not where this story is going. But what happened was I decided to call the temp agency again. And when I called the temp agency again, they said, oh, they looked up my stuff and they must have been in a jam in some way. Because what they said was, how quickly could you be at this place? How quickly could you go to this job? Whoop. All of a sudden, instead of just eating lunch while watching Matlock, now I'm getting ready, I'm jumping out the door, I'm running into the car, and now I have a job making copies at an oil and gas rig company, right? It turns out, as much as they told me my experience wasn't valuable, Apparently, it was. Apparently, a year at the copy center in Staples is really valuable when an organization has an audit and they have tens of thousands of copies that need to be made. So I actually ended up staying at that company for the next 6 years, right? Went in as a temp and was able to secure a job and stay there. I have not been back to substitute teaching. I've thought about it, have not been back. I still think I would have some of the same challenges. If you're mad at a 6 year old for acting like a 6 year old, that's on you. What I found was I really enjoyed that work, that going in every day to the office, seeing the other people in the office. At that time it was just making copies, but oh, it was so much less stress than being a teacher, and it paid more. It paid more and it was less stress. So I was really happy to find that role and to be able to continue on with that organization. And that organization is what gave me my first steps into process improvement and my certifications. So I am deeply indebted to them as well. But I think the biggest thing for me that's changed in the last 15 years or 20 years since that happened is that all those no's that I heard at that time, I heard them as really, really hard no's. Really hard no's. They weren't. They weren't hard no's. I had to be persistent. I had to stick up for myself. I had to make that story. I said maybe before, my history degree doesn't have any relevance to process improvement. It does. It's all about research and organization, vetting facts, bringing them together, and telling a story. This is exactly what we're doing in process improvement. But I don't have that story because somebody figured that out for me. I figured that out and I tell that story. At that temp agency, I could have told the story of how Staples was relevant, of how Blockbuster was relevant, of how my experience and the recommendations that came along with it were valid for the work that they do. But instead, all I heard was buts, no's, I don't know, maybe, call us in a couple weeks, right? I took all of those as closed doors. So I want to really encourage you as you look at your career and the opportunities to not hear those words as end game things, as like, I'm done, I can't do this, right? Because in college, in high school, 100% that's what I heard. For the first probably 10 or 20 years of my career, I think that's what I heard, right? In my 20s, in my teens, that's what I heard. No means no. It's a hard closed door. It is not a hard closed door. You need to own it. You need to be persistent and you need to show up. You need to tell those stories because nobody else is going to tell them for you. No one else is going to be out there advocating for you in the way that you should be. Right. And so I think it's really important as I look back on that story and that experience that I not see that in a negative light, but see how my persistence helped me to get where I am today, but also how I sabotaged myself and own some of that. So I hope as you go out, you look for those doors and you smash them down. You see them as obstacles, not things as barriers that you can't get around, right? You can overcome these things. If you want to chat more about it, feel free. I have free 30-minute chats that I do. So I'm happy to chat with you a little bit about your experience or the challenges that you're having if you're coming out of college or if you're going into a new industry or program. While I do process improvement mostly, it doesn't have to be about process improvement. What's most important is I want to see you succeed. I want you to be able to achieve your dreams, whatever those dreams are. So if you enjoyed this video, I am going to try to do a few more videos where I tell some of my personal stories. So we'll see if you like that, great. If you don't like that, then I may not post too many more. And I hope you have an absolutely lovely day and keep up improving.